So the celebrations began after German radio broadcast the announcement on the afternoon 7th, and that's when the celebrating began.
We're looking at the Royal Air Force Marching Department. Most of the Royal Air Force personnel on parade are from the King's Colour Squadron and 34 Squadron RAF Leeming. 3-4 Squadron RAF Regiment is a specialist unit established in 1951, originally to provide ground defence for airfields. It's a highly trained force which can deploy globally to protect air assets in high threat environments. What should the Royal Air Force record be for our viewers today?
Well, the RAF was exemplary in the Second World War. It was an absolutely key part of Britain's defensive system. Built up in the late 1930s, we had the first fully coordinated air defense system anywhere in the world, which is one of the reasons why we resisted the Luftwaffe in the summer of 1930. And this was all part of the kind of steel, not our flesh policy. The idea to use global reach, mechanization, modernity and industrialization to do a lot of the hard yards so that our frontline servicemen didn't have to. And although there was a huge sacrifice in terms of the men who took part in Bomber Command, almost 50%, it was a comparatively, in the big scheme of things, small number, and this was all part of denuding German efficiency, and was carried out with increasing success and efficiency as the war progressed.
The Battle of Britain, to this day, the faces and the names live on as part of our continuous island history going back more than 1,000 years.
Well, it was an absolutely crucial moment because the Germans intended to invade, and their first task was to destroy the RAF, and they failed absolutely utterly. Out of 138 airfields in Britain, they only managed to knock out more than one for more than 48 hours, which wasn't a great record. And part of that was the efficiency with which we had our defence system, the speed with which we were producing new Spitfires, which was between 2 and 3 times as many as the Germans were producing, the tactical skill and flexibility of our commanders, the skill of the pilots, and the huge sacrifice that they made.
And the Prince of Wales?
Absolutely. I mean, they're listening to James, who sort of moved to look at those images of the Prince of Wales with his son, and of course he's in his RAF #1 uniform. He served with the RAF, with the Search and Rescue Division. Of course, he had his wings presented to him by his father, who also served in the RAF. You've got the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh there. Again, in military uniform, we know that Prince Edward, when he was younger, he served in the Marines. Again, this whole important connection with the military, but certainly when it comes to Prince William, he wears those wings that were presented to him by his father with great pride.
The mass pipes and drums, they're made up from infantry soldiers of the Foot Guards Battalion. The Irish Guards, the drums and pipes, were formed during the First World War.
Oh, I'll put your tea now.
The Princess Royal, Katie?
Yeah, she's going to have an important role over these coming days. She is in the family uniform. She's going to be very busy. She's going to the Channel Islands, again sort of standing in for the monarch, representing the king around Britain during these important days of commemoration. And of course, military links that run very deep for the Princess Royal as well. She holds many of her own military titles.
And behind, the uniformed civilian services, the police service, the fire and rescue service.
Get the fire bushes put there. They've either bought it for just for anyway. They've got ketting.
The ambulance service, the St John Ambulance, the British Red Cross, His Majesty's Prison and Probation Service, the Women's Royal Voluntary Service, His Majesty's Coast Guard, Royal Fleet Auxiliary, and 6 representatives of the Merchant Navy proudly walking past the Queen Victoria Memorial and the King on the dais, and James reminding us very eloquently of the role of the Merchant Navy in keeping us alive during 1939 to 1945, the events today marking Victory in Europe Day, and James and guests were Sophie reminding us the war did not end on this day. Now, this is one of the bands I think I saw first in the whole day. It's the band of the Boys and Girls Brigade. Let's listen in to them on their proud day. Girls Brigade is part of a global fellowship all around the world. It's 130 years old, and the groups participating include from the 3rd Ryde and 1st Newport Girls Brigade, both from the Isle of Wight. St John Ambulance Cadets, attending Dillonhurst, the St John Ambulance National Cadet of the Year, identified somewhere in there. I think that must be him in the middle with the gold braid. Yes, that must be the Cadet of the Year from the St John Ambulance in the green uniform to the rear of our picture. And these youngsters are also getting a round of applause from the crowd. There are volunteer police cadets, the scouts, the army cadets, the fire cadets, girl guiding, Jewish Lads and Girls Brigade, the Royal Air Force cadets, the Royal Navy cadets. James, the cadets who were old enough would have served as cadets and then gone to war, and then at the same time we have thousands of evacuees. The role of children is recorded. This is very moving.
Well, yes, and this is it rather underlines the point that the Second World War affected every man, woman, and child in a way that no other conflict has. Really, very directly. I mean, from the aerial attacks on Britain and the Blitz, of course, which ran from September 1940 to May 1941, the evacuation of children into the country, and of course, you had school children also joining local home guards and playing their part there. So yes, it's a war that affected everyone, not least the nation's youngsters.
Let's listen in. Now, let me take a moment to tell you what's coming up in our broadcast today. We're so pleased and proud you're joining the BBC coverage today. We're aware that there will be a story. Proud family members braving the chill with a spare umbrella hat, always a very good idea. So what's coming up is that the rear of the procession will arrive at the Queen Victoria Monument. The royal family will then go inside Buckingham Palace. They will meet veterans in the garden. And then in just 20 minutes or so, we'll start to see the preparations after the tea party for the flypast, which is coming up in less than an hour from now, with the King leading his family and the nation from the balcony of Buckingham Palace, 80 years on from Victory in Europe Day. The flypast will have 23 aircraft led by a Lancaster bomber made. Now the Major General will call the procession to an end as he approaches His Majesty, the King. I hope you heard, Your Majesty, that concludes the parade. Otto, carrying the Major General, has done a fabulous job. I accused him of being slightly frisky. I should take that back and say that Otto has been exemplary on parade. 1,300 individuals proudly representing all parts of His Majesty's armed forces have processed From Parliament Square, the crossroads of our history, our past and our present, and our seat of our current government, past the scene where Winston Churchill led jubilant crowds, I read that he conducted them singing Land of Hope and Glory. And we've seen cadets, we've seen members of the uniformed civilian services all process from Parliament Square through Admiralty Arch, up the Mall, towards the Queen Victoria Monument, the Royal Party there. Bernard Morgan, 101, he joined in 1940 and in Normandy during the war. Day, Bernard Morgan received a surrender effective sometime tomorrow, but he had to keep it secret. He had a big party with his comrades. They lit a huge bonfire and celebrated late into the night. Bernard said, "It's so important we make the most of these opportunities to remember what happened." James, you've met many of these veterans over the past 30 years. I have a feeling, although I know you as a historian, you just grew totally addicted about talking to this generation.
Yes, and one of the very first people I met was Geoffrey Wellham, who was known as Boy Wellham during the Battle of Britain. He was only 18 at the time and flew with 92 Squadron Flying Spitfires. And I remember going to see him in his local pub down in Mullion in Cornwall. And he picked up my pint and picked up his pint, and he said, "So here I was in my spit, and there's this ME 109 bearing down on me." And I just remember thinking this was absolutely wonderful. And to hear it firsthand from someone who'd actually been there, it was just incredible. And yes, I've been lucky enough to meet sort of over 300 veterans from all around the world, and it's been just a privilege.
We await the national anthem. We don't want to speak over it, so forgive us if you think we've gone away. We're waiting so that we can hear the anthem.
Well, we have been, so I hope you'll stay with us for that.
To Redcar by the sea, where we're actually living, there was a big street party, and because my mother
Taking their places soon on the balcony of Buckingham Palace to watch the flypast. Queen Camilla's father, Major Bruce Shand, served in the 12th Lancers during World War II and earned the Military Cross for his bravery during the Battle of Dunkirk and a second at El Alamein. A few days ago, Her Majesty invited one veteran along to Clarence House to share his story with her. Buckingham Palace was bombed.
For years later, anyone that worked with her,
That people didn't know they were coming, but just to show solidarity with them.
exactly that, and it was used for a lot of the people in the country. They used to go into hospitals, see people who had been injured. There's a really interesting statistic from the Imperial War Museum that showed that every time they went into a factory, the Ministry of Supply was seeing them there, Princess Elizabeth in her ATS overalls, that actually it's something the public and veterans would want to see today echoed. So that's why we're seeing it today.
And the veterans today, we think there are about 50 of them who are gathered up back in Buckingham Palace, who are all being given tea. Hopefully we'll see some images of them.
What happened, several balcony appearances on this day 80 years ago.
No, absolutely. And to see the King and the Queen leading the charge here, stepping out onto the balcony, followed by the Princess Royal and her husband, Vice Timothy Lawrence. Of course, the Waleses and their three little ones making their debut for a VE Day commemoration. This is a very, very important moment. We didn't know if this balcony moment was going to happen, but it feels that it feels right. This is very much what people with Jubilee of VE Day, and of course the Duke of Kent, who's looking very, very frail, but in his medals, in his military uniform, just making his way over to stand with the Princess Royal.
Right, we are looking at wave 1 of the fly past. The Lancaster from the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight, built in May 1945. This fabulous Lancaster. James, what is the significance of this beautiful big bird?
Well, it was the mainstay of the RAF Bomber Command. You know, it was the workhorse, could carry a payload of 10 tons, involved in some of the most famous RAF raids of the entire war.
Flown today by Flight Lieutenant Seb Davey and Squadron Leader Ernie Wise. Navigated by Wing Commander Mark McNulty. Wave 2, we're going to look at the Voyager and the Atlas. The Voyager in front, the Royal Air Force's sole air-to-air refueler. The fuel necessary for refueling operations, as well as the aircraft itself, are carried within the tanks in the wings, the centre and even the tail. Flying the Voyager, Flight Lieutenant Jason Olsey, Flight Lieutenant Will Ricketts, Flight Lieutenant Andy Theobald and Sergeant Andy Bode. Behind, we're looking at the Atlas. On the right of our picture, it's an airlift that can carry a 30-ton payload over 2,000 miles. Listen to that thunderous roar. It can land on remote airfields on short or unprepared strips too. The Globemaster provides the Royal Air Force with a long-range strategic heavy lift transport aircraft that can operate in support of combat, peacekeeping or humanitarian missions worldwide. Now, you look at the belly of that big bird and you can tell somehow that that's capable of lifting giant forces thousands of miles.
Can we just take a moment to appreciate little Louis, because he will always make a balcony appearance all the more enjoyable, but he really does seem to enjoy it.
Let's hope there's more. We're all looking at the Poseidon in the middle. That is a Marine Patrol aircraft, and on each wing a Typhoon. And the Poseidon has the latest technology to detect, identify and monitor targets above and below the waves. And the Typhoons are from RAF Coningsby in Lincolnshire and one from RAF Lossiemouth in Scotland.
We'll have lip readers on that, don't worry. Give us a minute just to hear exactly what they're saying, but a real moment for the children to be witnessing. Not their first fly past, but this one is special.
Wave 5 of our fly past now. This is the rivet joint in the centre, a dedicated electronic surveillance aircraft. Its sensors within soak up electronic emissions from communications, radar and other systems. And on each wing is the F-35B Lightning, a multi-role next generation of combat aircraft, which can operate on aircraft carriers too. Now let me speak in advance of the Red Arrows. We will see 9 Hawks of the Royal Air Force Aerobatic Team, and 4 Lightnings. The Red Arrows are led by Red 1, Squadron Leader John Bond. And there they clear our screens. James, you feel we were being shaken in our little perch down here by the boom.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a splendid sight, isn't it? And there's nothing like fast jets and heavy jets going over you to kind of feel the kind of weight of air power.
Well, now, I promised you the national anthem, I think an hour ago, so I was very early in promising you the national anthem. Katie Nichol.
Well, it's a spectacle, isn't it? This is the King's first VE Day commemoration. Of course, we've been so used to seeing our late Queen lead these commemorations. This is the King. This is the Queen. This is the future as well. That idea of continuity, that link with the armed forces, with the veteran community, that means so much to our monarch, to the Queen. A wave there from the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh. Of course, we had 8 balcony appearances.
We felt we were